from the Ticats Audio Network, this is the CFL This Week with Bubba O'Neil.
Why is McLeod Bethel-Thompson all fired up at the Canadian Football League? Adam Bighill drops a calling card in Regina, and now there's just one winless team in the CFL as the Tiger Cats knock off the Argonauts. This is the CFL This Week on the Ticats Audio Network. I'm your host, Bubba O'Neil. Welcome to the number one no-holds-barred CFL podcast that features the top broadcasters, columnists, and insiders that bring their unfiltered opinions on a weekly basis. On the CFL This Week, well, he's one of the authorities of sports broadcasting and, of course, just sports coverage in Edmonton from Sports 4 for 1440. Jason Gregor, outstanding to have you back there, partner.
How you doing?
Good. I'm always good talking football. And it's time to sound that rookie alert. This is long awaited from the Niagara Sports Report on News Talk 610 CKTB. Rob Mawhood, how have you been, partner?
Bubba, good to see you, buddy. Thanks for having me. Looking forward to this.
Hey, let's get right down to business. Hey, Tiger Cats win their first game of the season, and they beat those rival boatmen. What did they do right there, Rod, and what was kind of lacking in their first 5 games?
I think basically at the start, obviously special teams was huge to get that block punt early on, to get the lead early on. They hung on. You could tell they're a team mentally that wasn't maybe there because you could tell there was some nerves setting in, but to get that big win, their first win of the season, let's see if they can continue it on now.
Jason, what did you see?
Well, you know, Hamilton to me was a team that I know they were 0-5. I didn't think they were that bad. Like that Ottawa game, they probably should have won a few weeks ago. Not only did they miss the 2-point convert, then they give up a 27-yard return, that sets them up to eventually get the game-winning field goal. And I thought Hamilton, because if you look at their stats in that game, it wasn't like Bo Levi. That wasn't his best game. It wasn't like they were passing the ball all over the field. Their defense, they won this. To me, anytime you win the turnover battle, you got a really good chance to win the game. And so that was something they did. As Rod mentioned, I thought the blocked punt was huge for them. Just you get some momentum sometimes, and that can be very powerful throughout the game. But I thought what Hamilton did in the second half was I felt like they didn't shoot themselves in the foot. They didn't do something to give Toronto an opportunity to win. And obviously they put Toronto in a situation where they weren't happy with their starter, so Duke gets pulled out of the game. And Hamilton's one where I was actually surprised if you look at the standings and you look at their stats to think this team's 0-5. Like, I'm not saying they're a dominant team by any stretch of the imagination, but I don't think they were necessarily representative of what their 0-for record was. And now I guess the schedule maker does them a favor. We'll see. They come to Edmonton for an opportunity to win 2 in a row against a team that's yet to win, and a team that right now can't win and finds a way to lose.
Rod, the thing with the Ticats to me was, I think most important was to win at home. Get a win at home, because after the Lions debacle, they go into the bye week. But, and I know we've seen this in sports all the time, but there was an element to their media meetings with the media throughout the week leading up to the game. They seem to be saying the right things and really recognize what some of their faults were. And I thought what was really critical is that in a time where everyone was calling for changed, fire the DB, whatever, they didn't do anything. They didn't do anything at all. And just, this was, I think, their prize.
Yeah, no, they needed that win at home. And as Jason mentioned too, they didn't do anything wrong. They didn't shoot themselves in the foot. And we'll see if they can carry it on. You said it, Jason. Schedule makers are on the football side of the Ticats right now. We'll see what happens here in week 8.
And Jason, the crazy thing about it is that, we've said this for so long. I try to avoid the saying because it's so cliche. Really, it's about what you're doing in the last half of the season, pretty much in the Canadian Football League, and getting hot.
Oh, 100%. That, Labor Day, I think, has long been kind of, for some people, the start, the unofficial start of the season for the CFL. In a 9-team league, unless you're 0-8 like the Elks last year, rarely can you. We've seen BC won a Grey Cup after starting 0-5, and won the majority of their games down the stretch. So teams can do it. It's obviously difficult, but to me, it's if you can get to that Labor Day mark and you're within 1 or 2 games, all you need is a 3-game winning streak and you're right back in it. And a lot of it comes down to who you beat down the stretch and the schedule maker, right? So you look at Hamilton, right? Like they played Saskatchewan twice, they played Calgary, and they played BC. They got a lot of games left against the East, which is going to be a lot more head-to-head matchups. And so if you're trailing a team, it's not as daunting if you can win that game because then it's a proverbial 4-pointer and suddenly you move a lot quicker up the standings.
Yeah, standings-wise, that win for Hamilton was, sets the tone now.
Well, setting the tone for, I guess, the Labor Day contest, the Banjo Bowl, as they call it, was Bombers linebacker Adam Bighill. Wild ending in Regina in that close game as the Saskatchewan do defeat Winnipeg. There was a little calling card that Mr. Bighill had at the very final play of the game, kind of just laid out the Riders quarterback, Shea Patterson, who was running around trying to take the final seconds off the clock. Jason, was that hit fair or foul?
100% it's fair. What the hell are you doing? Throw the damn ball away. Like we always talk about play 60 minutes. You want to play till the final whistle. What's Bighill supposed to be? Oh, we're losing, so I'm not going to play. You kidding me? Like, look at the last what happened in the next night, Toronto and Hamilton, right? You're able to run around and throw the ball away. Like that. This whole we're going to kill the clock and they're not going to hit us, and then people are complaining. Give me a break. Like you got to know the situation and understand. You've got a defensive guy who's obviously a little annoyed in how they lost, but what he did wasn't cheap. It wasn't dirty. If that play happens at any other minute of the game, no one's complaining about it. So I had zero issue with it at all for me. And it's a learning experience for the young quarterback. That's like, do you really need that extra second? Does it matter? Take the damn hit, punt the ball away. So I have no issue with it. And I know, right, I love the passion of Rider fans, but let's be real here. If it's role reversal, they're loving it. So I've always said I don't complain about plays, especially when they're clean. I have no issue with that. We always tell everybody play till the final win. You know, the biggest cliche in sports is 60-minute game. So play to the final whistle. I had no issue.
Well, Rod, what was Corey May so pissed off about? He was fired up. I thought there was going to be blows between him and Coach O'Shea.
It seemed that early. Then they were calm. As Jason said, it's a clean hit. Fundamentally, you teach how to tackle. That was a fundamental good tackle. That was a clean hit, a fair hit. Was it necessary that late in the game? Maybe not, but he's frustrated. We know Bighill. He's a big-time player in the CFL. Full marks, and I think it's over with now. O'Shea basically, and Mace, you saw they calmed it down. Yeah, it was a clean hit, fair hit, and move on. No penalty. People for not talking about there's no penalty flag on the play, right? So every official on the field had a chance to throw some yellow there. They didn't, right? So there we go.
Jason,
Bubs, what do you think?
What do I think? I secretly loved every second of it, right? I loved the fan response of the people that were there. I loved that the benches cleared. Okay, I got a little bit of hockey in me as well. I thought it was fun to watch, Jason. It was good, and I can't wait for Labor Day.
You're setting the tone for the next game. Bighill was frustrated.
I can't wait.
Yeah.
Wouldn't you feel the same way, Jason, if you were sitting in the seats?
Oh, 100%. Like football is a highly emotional game. And when you have all you have to do is throw the ball away. And then if Bighill takes a shot after he's throwing the ball, well, then everybody can, the refs are probably throwing a flag. He's probably getting fined. Yeah. But Rod accurately pointed out, if there's no flag in the play at a time when we all know if the quarterback gets touched even a little bit too hard nowadays, flags are coming out, right? Let's be honest here, which is fine to a point if you want to protect the quarterbacks. But sometimes I think the official's like, hey, dude, you're not going to protect yourself and you're exposing yourself to taking an unnecessary hit. That's like, what are you waiting for at that point to me? So I don't blame the defender. To me, if there's any blame, and really there's no blame, like it's tackles allowed and it's clean. It wasn't a headshot. He didn't spear him. That was a textbook tackle. So yeah, I enjoy it. To me, having a little animosity, I think it sets it up great for the rivalry because it's going to be a storyline now. And having storylines is a great way to hype up the anticipation of a big game. And that's always a huge game, but now it's probably going to be a little bit higher. And I hope Saskatchewan's pissed off. Like, You know what? I get sometimes there's the false attitude. Okay, I better act like I'm really mad here just so my team thinks that I'm standing up for my guys. And maybe deep down, Mace was really mad. But I'm sure if he takes a step back afterwards and is like, well, there's no flag in the play. It's not a cheap shot. You can say, well, you shouldn't have hit him. The game's over. Well, no, the game wasn't over, right? You let yourself take an unnecessary hit. So I put more of the onus on Saskatchewan QB than I do on Bighill.
Yeah, I think you certainly have to go that way. But Rod, just for final note on this, isn't this what we love? We love the rivalries. We love the reason to watch, and of course, as Jason kind of pointed out, there's going to be some hype leading up to this game. We love this, don't we?
Yeah, this is what sports is about. As Jason alluded to, it's a highly emotional sport. That's what sports is about. The rivalries, the big hits, right? And yeah, bring it on.
Okay, guys, from one young quarterback to the veteran quarterback of the Canadian Football League, Zach Collaros, guys, look at his stats. 7 interceptions thrown, 2 touchdown passes completed. He's only played technically 5.5 games as he sat out that game in the final half against Calgary due to the chest injury. I got to ask this question. I can't believe I'm actually going there. Rod, I'll start with you. Does Zach Collaros give the Blue Bombers the best chance to win a game?
I think the Blue Bombers brass still thinks that, but there's got to be a time when they say, we got to look differently here and go a different move because, yeah, his numbers don't lie, as they say. Stats don't lie. Am I surprised? Obviously, yeah, with what he's done in the past. He is getting older. Is the time now to make the change at QB? They have potentially. I think obviously Winnipeg has the backup there to get at least a look and a long look. But when are they going to make it? And maybe, as Jason alluded to, maybe they're going to give them to the halfway mark of the season, and then they're going to make the change. But you wonder when it's going to be. It has to be soon.
Jake?
Well, their challenge is Strevler's never been a great passing quarterback, guys. Like, go back to his time in Winnipeg, right? Like, you look at the 1 year, like I think in his career, he's 20 touchdowns, 20 interceptions. Like, that's not a good ratio. You don't want a 1-to-1 ratio.
Better than Zach.
Yeah, for right now, yeah, it's not better career-wise. And even this year, in his limited time, they both have identical, horrific 77% QB ratings, right? So I'm not sure, to be honest, if you're going to get a massive uptick in Strevler. Now, Strevler obviously has the running ability. There's no question, right? Like, that's what he can do. Sometimes maybe you got to change it for the sake of it. But, like, he hasn't started a game in the CFL, like, in since 2019, I think it is. So I know he was in the NFL, but he didn't play a lot, right? Good for him, made a lot of money. But we now maybe Strevler's a guy who just needs the opportunity to give him some reps. If it's me, I probably stick with Collaros for another week. I want to give him the opportunity for what he's done for my organization. If I was the Bombers, I think loyalty matters. I think Mike O'Shea has proven that he's a very loyal guy, and Zach Collaros has proven, he's been an elite quarterback for a long time. Is it a funk, or is it, as Rod suggested, is this the start of the decline? It's hard to predict. Usually the decline isn't like this bad. It isn't where all of a sudden it's like, boom, just hitting smack into the wall, and you just like, the old cartoon character, and you're just sliding down the wall because you're done. And, the interception ratio isn't great. He's only completing, for him, he's below his completion percentage even. So he looks a little bit off to me. I don't know what it is. And so I'd still want to roll the dice on him for a bit longer, but I think his leash has become a little bit shorter as far as how long of a rope he'll get before they're going to go to Strevler. But Strevler, to me, he's still a big question mark as far as what he can do, historically as a passer in the league. And, we'll have to see. Maybe, all the time being on the sidelines has helped him in both those leagues. But in his limited time this year in Winnipeg, his numbers aren't much better than Collaros. The only difference is he's not throwing as many interceptions.
Rod, we saw this before. If you remember back, I believe 2007, 2008, and Zach's what would be end up being his final year with the Tiger Cats when they got off to that 0-8 start. And I remember a game, I believe it was the 7th game of that 0-8 start, where the Ticats got beat 60-8 in Calgary.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
Zach threw a pass out to the left flats, and it got picked off and returned. I think Tre Roberson went the other way for like a 60-yard touchdown on a pick six. And I thought to myself, he's shot. It's over. Like either it's a confidence thing or there's injuries. And then then he had a whole and crazy second career, basically.
Mm-hmm.
So we might have seen this from him before, because when I watch him pass, the ball's in the dirt, the ball's high, hanging receivers out to dry, getting nailed in the ribs. I can't figure out what's up with him. Can you? Do you see any differences? I know there's some injuries, and you lose Schoen, and you lose. I'm missing one of their top receivers, but they're missing some top receivers as well too. Is that what it boils down to?
Well, you said something off the top in regards to a chest injury, and maybe at the chest or combined with the ribs. Obviously, that motion, maybe there is something more serious that he is battling and trying to battle through. And that alludes to what Jason said. Maybe, I know, give him another week, but maybe they need to give him a full week off where he avoids contact completely, just to see if that's the injury. Because obviously you think about the throwing motion. Obviously pectorals, you need your chest, you need your shoulders, right? All of that is connected. Is that the reason? I don't know. And the other thing I was going to bring up, and we can another sidebar here. If Strevler's not the answer, right? Do you look for a trade here? Is Winnipeg going to maybe look for a trade here to shake things up in terms of who they can bring in? Who knows?
I look at Ottawa. They got pretty wealthy quarterback room, and I'm hearing Masoli's real close. That's looking really down the road. But I think, Jason, here's the thing with that quarterback situation with Winnipeg, and you're much closer to the situation than we are. I feel like there's a lot of pressure to win. I mean, they've sort of set themselves up with the pressure to win with their fans. It's a hostile place to play. They're filling their building. Like, maybe decisions have to be made quicker than we would expect out here.
Possibly, but I look at Winnipeg, and I'll just go back. Like Zach Collaros' previous 3 years, 90 touchdowns, 34 interceptions over a 3-year period. Like, that's elite. And we all saw the results in championships. To me, it's 7 bad games. And I think sometimes we're quick to want to just, let's, he's done. But I'm like, man, that's a pretty good track record. They'll know what his health is, right? And they're not going to say it publicly. And so they would know, I think it's fair to suggest, hey, maybe there needs to be a rest. Now, I haven't looked at their schedule. I should probably pull it up to see, when do they have a bye week coming up here? And if they do, can that be the difference for them to just get them through to the bye week and get some extra time, right? Because they're playing the Argos, and then they play BC. Then they have the bye week in week 10, right?
So 2 more weeks, yeah.
All right, so you might want to limp there and see, or they'll probably go through the reps at practice and see where he's at. But I think it would be premature yet to just give up on Zach Collaros when I look at how dominant he's been for the last 3 years. He's only 35. Like 35 today is a lot different than 35 even a decade ago, right? Like you look in all sports, we're seeing, and Collaros became an elite player, right? Like he's an MVP, he's an elite player. And we see the elite players at all different sports now maintaining a top level a lot longer in their career. And so I would probably guess that this is more injury-based than talent-based.
Mm-hmm. No, yeah. What athletes have available? Exactly what you said 20 years ago. I mean, the rehab, the techniques, everything off the field. Yeah, 35 is. I won't say it's young, Bubs, but it's certainly not old now in sports.
By the way, Kenny Lawler was the injury I could not get off the top of my head there with the receivers, and those are big losses at receiver.
Well, getting Whitehead's going to help them, right?
Yeah, for sure. There's no doubt. They got to get him in the passing game, obviously. Surprising a guy like that was sitting around for as long as he was. Hey, the Lions' 5-game win streak came to an end this weekend. Real tough loss for them. But they lose to the Calgary Stampeders, who, not points-wise, but at least yardage-wise, are the worst defense in the league with Calgary. I know it was Wally Buono night, and the Stamps were all charged up. Jason, what happened to the Lions there? They looked so incredible for 5 consecutive games.
Yeah, they did. And I do wonder if it was, the ghosts of Wally Buono past when he was in Calgary. God, they were good. Like they'd win 15, 14 games for fun. It seemed all the time. And, there was a lot more emotion in that building. He was a huge figure for a long time and well-deserved honor for him. And it was an odd night. So if you look at BC the week before, McInnes gets 14 passes thrown his way, catches all 14 for 243 yards. This week he gets 8 thrown his way, only catches 3. Right, like that's probably not going to happen. Where he's going to have catching half of the passes that are thrown his way for a variety of reasons. Not saying it's on him, right? But BC's offense has been pretty good. Vernon Adams, I think, has been pretty consistent. That to me, that kind of reeked of a game where a team is playing very well. And maybe you get a little bit of high on yourself and you take a team just slightly for granted, not a lot, because I think, as the saying goes, and it was fitting because it was a Sunday game on any given Sunday, anything can happen. And away they go. So I'm not too concerned about it for BC. Vernon Adams has had a really good season. And, the only thing is they haven't been able to punch a lot in passing lately, through the air. So that would be maybe my slight, and that's probably nitpicking a little bit on BC, but I just think that they're very good. And Calgary showed up and had a game, and they probably feel like, this is what we can do. And in the CFL, like maybe outside of Edmonton right now, and even then they're not that bad. They're the best team at beating themselves. But I think there's lots of teams on any given day that can win. And that's what you like in the league. And I look at Calgary, and I do think that they got some guys who are really amped up. Hey, it's Wally Buono night. And, even though lots of them probably never played for Wally, but if you're playing in the CFL, you got to know who Wally Buono is. I don't see how you couldn't. He's one of the greatest, if not one of the best coaches of all time. So I think that was probably it a little bit, guys. One game, I wouldn't be surprised if we see BC bounce back after their bye week and come right back at
it. From a Calgary perspective, what do you think about them? Like Jake Mayer, sometimes you're not quite sure. Is he elite? Is he a game manager? Dave Dickinson kind of runs this very conservative-like offense. He's certainly the one coach that wants to dedicate to the run, which is hardly exciting. We talked about their defense, the amount of yardage that they give up. Have they turned the corner? Can they be trusted right now? Are they a contender in the West? Your thoughts?
Still early, 3-3, way too early. You just mentioned Mayer. Obviously a huge game. I think he threw 307, 3 touchdowns. Opposite end, I think Adams came in 6 of the 7 games over 300 yards. He threw for 60 yards in the second half. I think finished with 197. Win was a factor at McMahon. I don't think you could say Calgary's turned the corner, but 3-3 getting back there again. They're in the picture, and that's all they can ask for at a home game. And I'm sure, Jason, you mentioned Wally Buono, and if the players that didn't know him, I'm sure someone in that locker room said, hey, this guy did this. He's been there that long. Get pumped up for this one. Who knows, what was said in there. But all those factors led to Calgary. And you said it, the yardage-wise, best team in the CFL yardage-wise against the worst. And they kind of reversed things that night.
But, Rod, do you trust the Stamps?
No, I would not say the Stamps are – no. I would say, what we just talked about, Collaros, the opposite end of the spectrum. Adams is obviously, I think, up for MVP right now with his numbers, right? Even with that game thrown in, he's the real deal right now.
I think you got to give some credit to Calgary's secondary. Like you look at their the yards per catch, I think for Adams in that game was only 6. Like he's had games of 12, 13, 10 plus. Like, he's been throwing the ball all over the field, and they got 2 interceptions. He only had 3 coming into the game, so. Maybe a slightly off game. I know he still threw 2 touchdown passes, but I look at Adams, and he's had a great year. And this is, I talk to a lot of coaches, sometimes a little bit of a reset, especially now you go into a bye week, though, they won't be enjoying their bye week as much. They still should feel good about themselves. But I think when they come back out of the bye week, to me, I want to see how they respond, because that is now, I think it's back-to-back games for Adams with 2 interceptions after only throwing 1 in his first 5 starts. So, that's maybe a small area that they're going to want to look at and see, okay, what's going on here. But I still like BC. Calgary, you need to show more. But at the same time, I think Calgary showed that, they have the capability, guys, of playing well. But keep in mind, BC probably had their worst game offensively by a long shot, and they only lost by 1 point. So, I'm not going to jump yet onto to Calgary. I think there's, BC to me still the class of the West, especially with Harris out in Saskatchewan, and Calgary, Winnipeg probably battling for 3 right now.
Rod, Jason kind of said something that made me think a little bit there about the interceptions there for VA. And with the back-to-back weeks of a couple of interceptions after throwing one, and you well know in this Canadian Football League, there's a saying, good VA, bad VA. Are you worried about that at all if you're a BC Lion fan?
Not yet, because the other thing I was going to say, VA has those games, right, where he just lights up, throws for 450, and then he'll come out and stink up the joint. So hopefully VA for BC Lions, and you just said going into the bye week, maybe the best thing that could happen. And maybe they were looking ahead, right? They thought this was going to be a win, and they got caught, and Calgary got the big win.
Well, if you remember the game last year in Toronto at BMO Field, I think he threw 7. It was unbelievable. And they still, and again, to Jason's point, they still lost that game by less than a touchdown.
They were in it. Yeah, they were in it again. Yeah.
Right to the very end. Hey, okay, so the Edmonton Elks, they dropped to 0-6, yet another loss as they lose to the Red Blacks. And then after the game in this post-game press conference with the TSN, I believe, and the rest of the assembled media, McLeod Bethel-Thompson took the opportunity to vent. We'll say that. First of all, he started about talking about the fact that the Elks schedule and the way it's set up, it's a travesty. To use his words, it's a travesty and it's disgusting. Later, he complained about his playing time as new head coach, or at least interim head coach, Jarius Jackson, wanted to put in Tre Ford as a change of pace, different packages, a different look. And he talked about the fact that he couldn't get into a rhythm. Jason, you were there. You observed all of this. The floor is yours to talk to us about McLeod Bethel-Thompson and his complaints.
Well, I'm guessing it stems from the fact that that's twice now that they've played, a game within 5 days, right? They did it earlier where they played on a Saturday, and then they played the next Thursday in BC. And so maybe that's his complaint. I could see if you have it once. Now, I know in the NFL, you have games Sunday, Thursday, right? But it's once. I don't know if there's teams who do it twice. So that might be his complaint. He probably needed to be a little bit more accurate in it. But the difference was they're playing the exact same team. So you can look at it. I know that maybe they're emotional because some of their guys, they had some season-ending injuries because of it. So I get it. You're a good teammate. You're worried. I think it's a combination of A, it's the second time it's already happened in 6 games for them. So when, B, they're 0-6. C, the offense sucked that game. They were brutal in the second half. Their defense continually kept giving them the ball to start drives in Ottawa's territory, and they couldn't punch it in. They kept having to settle for field goals, and then their field goal kicker missed 3 out of 7. So I'm sure it was a combination of things. Guys, you want a player to vent, and so he can vent, and I'm allowed to disagree with him. I think he probably should have said, hey, it's ridiculous that we do this twice in the last 4 weeks. He would probably have an argument if he words it that way, right? Because that happened twice. Then they have a bye week, and then they come out and they do it right again. So when you think about it, in both of their last 4 games, the second game after both times, it's been on 5 days. So if that's what he was talking about, I went back and looked. I could maybe see some frustration. The fact that I didn't like when he said, well, Tre Ford came in and got me out of my rhythm. I'm like, what? What are you talking about? What rhythm? You weren't in any rhythm to start. It wasn't like the offense had done anything. Then he came in for 2 series, and then you played the entire second, third, and fourth quarter. So if you are out of rhythm for maybe your first 2 series in the second quarter, all right, I can buy that. But what the hell? You go to halftime, now you can't get back in rhythm. You're sitting in halftime, you're doing whatever you're doing. It's like, well, geez, Tre Ford had those 2 series in the first quarter. I just can't punch the ball in. So actually that bothered me more, to be honest. And it was kind of the first time we've seen any excuses come out of Edmonton, right? There hasn't been excuses. And because really there's no reason for it. The Elks, without question, the best team in the league at beating themselves. If you look at how they've lost games this year, guys, like how they blew that game against Ottawa blows my mind. At home, they tie it up. The building's going crazy. Fans have been dying for something. There's 8 seconds left. First of all, you snap the ball on 3rd and goal. Why not wait till there's 3 seconds left? There's number one mistake. Then number 2, what the hell? You don't know how to squib pick the ball in the middle of the field? Squib kick it. That you're probably going to get it to someone who doesn't run the ball very often. And even then, you would hope that, hey, don't give up the middle of the field. Oh, let's give up a 20-yard gain down the middle. Like, it was the worst, right? And then you throw Beatty here. They got rid of Dean Faithful, who became kind of a fan favorite in Edmonton as a kicker, which is hard to do, guys. Like, if there's a position that's hard to be a fan favorite, it's a kicker. Usually, you know what? The fan, oh, look at this guy. I could be a kicker. Of course, we know that's not true. And he was a fan favorite in a kind of a weird way. And then they bring in Beatty, and he has been brutal. Like, you're a veteran. I get that there's wind. Figure it out. Like, figure it out. You can't continue.
He's got a strong leg.
Yeah, he's got a strong leg. Yeah, a strong to miss it wide, Bubs. Like, hey, like strong means Jack, you know what, if you can't put it between the uprights. So I was more upset about the Ford comment than I was about the scheduling. The scheduling I could understand when I went back and looked. He probably could have worded it better, but whatever. Guys are emotional. They're not going to say the right thing. I know I've said many things not very clear when I got fired up, but that to me was the bigger issue here is that, like they're 0-6. And my bigger question to you guys is, what the hell are we waiting for in Tre Ford? Like, let's do the math. Last season, they start 0-8 with, by the way, a terrible offensive coordinator. So they get rid of him, and then they change quarterbacks. And what happens? They go 4-6, which is a pretty big, improvement, I would say.
Turnaround, yeah.
Then they come in the off. Well, geez, Tre Ford, he maybe won too many games for us. We don't want that. We're in a rebuild, so let's go get an older quarterback. And what does he do? Now he's 0-6. So you're 0-8. One guy's 4-6. Then you're 0-6. And I see a lot of people out there talking about the Elks. Well, Bethel-Thompson's a better passer. What the hell does that mean? Like, yeah, okay. So he passes the ball. He's probably more accurate. He also is attempting this year in 6 games, 38 pass attempts per game. Tre Ford attempted 22 in his 10 games. But you know what else happened when Tre Ford was in? The Elks actually ran the damn ball. Brown had 800 yards rushing in the 10 games, and Ford had 622. So they had 1,400 rushing yards, guys, in 10 games. They're not even averaging 35 yards from Brown a game this year. So don't tell me their offense is worse with Ford when they had a passing and a running attack, and they actually average more yards per game in those 10 games with Ford than they're averaging yards per game in the 6 game with Bethel-Thompson. To me, when practice comes this week for the Elks game, if Ford isn't taking the number 1 reps, I don't know what the hell the organization's doing.
Rod, I'll get to you in a second. I got to go back to Jason on this.
Why?
No, I mean, there's T-shirts saying "Free Tre Ford." Like, I seen them. Like, why did Chris Jones not play him?
He didn't like him from day one, right? Remember, he drafted Tre Ford and instantly wanted to change his position. He was like, this guy's an athlete. And Chris Jones has always been a big believer that I draft athletes and they're going to play other positions. We've seen a few other, linebackers play DB. Heck, Eddie Steele was a D lineman who played on the offensive line the year they won the Grey Cup. So I think Jones thinks, well, anybody can change positions. And Tre Ford's like, no, I'm a quarterback. And I'm a quarterback who actually hasn't had a lot of reps. You guys would know him better than me, even as far as his youth sport career. He didn't have a ton of reps because of COVID and everything else. And, but the guy's a great athlete. And so they didn't want him to play quarterback. So they stick with Taylor Cornelius, who was junk. And they just kept losing. And finally, well, I guess we'll have to change. And then Tre Ford comes in and he wins games and he adds some excitement. Fans are like, this team sucks, but I'll go watch Tre Ford. There was 25, 30,000 people in the building last year, and they were 4-14. And they were there because Tre Ford was entertaining and they were in games. Is he the best passer? No, but I don't care. He passed well enough. He had a 12 touchdown, 6 interception ratio. Bethel-Thompson's thrown 6 picks in 6 games. He threw 6 and 10. So he doesn't turn the ball over as much. He runs the ball better. They have a balanced attack. So now the D-line can't just pin their ears back, because I'll tell you right now, the Elks O-line, it's the worst in the league. Right? The Tiger Cats can confidently rush 4 players and get pressure when they face them on Sunday. But you know what might slow them down is if you have a quarterback now who can rush, and suddenly your outside contained guys like, well, geez, I can't get up the field here because I got to worry about Ford. And they allowed Brown to rush off the backside with a lot of success last year. So to me, it's about game planning, because their game plan isn't working with Bethel-Thompson. It's just not. And so what's the worst that can happen, guys? They lose again? Oh, well, how's that any worse? Like, all I know is 0-14 between Ford starting, 4-6 with him starting. I think I know which one's a better record. At the end of the day, I don't care who's a better passer. Who gives you a better chance to move the ball, running and passing, and win?
Rod, you're the St. Catharines Niagara Falls guy. I know where you're leaning.
Yeah, we said it obviously when we met this week. Jason, by the way, love that rant, buddy. That was legendary. Tre Ford is a freaking winner. All right, we know that. All right, speaks for itself. Jason, McLeod Bethel-Thompson knew, guaranteed before the game, that, listen, we're going to give Tre some reps here. He came in the first quarter, as Jason said. It's complete BS to say that got him off a rhythm. Now, when Tre came in, they didn't do anything either. All right,
fair.
But yeah, that was complete frustration from McLeod Bethel-Thompson. The numbers speak for themselves. Marketing wise, look, they've tried to make changes with the coaches, right? Didn't work. Make the change at quarterback, right? That's at least going to get the fans hyped. You said it last year, Jason. Fans were there because of one person, right? Tre Ford. Bubba, you just mentioned they got the free Tre Ford t-shirts. What's the worst that can happen here, right? They give him a game or two. If he struggles, go back. But you've got to make the move. You've got to make the move. It only makes sense.
Like, guys, so the Elks are in a rebuild right now. Right. I think we'd all agree with that. They're a team they got a lot of holes. They're offensive. So even if you put Tre Ford in, I get it. It's not the best situation because their O-line just isn't that good. And your O-line,
but he's got the ability. He's got the ability to avoid that.
Scramble for sure. They've got good receivers, and Tre Ford's it's not like he's a horrible passer. Can he go through 3-4 options? Maybe not. But he's a young quarterback. He's never going to do it unless he gets more reps. And I'm just trying to think of a team that lost continually and said, you know what? Because go to any other league, and in order for your quarterback to get better, he's got to get reps. You can, not many guys can get that much better. Now, there is a benefit of sitting on the sidelines and learning from a team when they're winning. Right? Because it's just a better atmosphere. I'm trying to think of a young quarterback who sat on the sidelines in a losing organization for multiple years. I'm trying to NFL or CFL. Like you had guys who got to play Peyton Manning, Troy Aikman. Go look at Anthony Calvillo's early seasons in the CFL. He was not lighting it up, guys. Not whatsoever, right? Like, not everybody can come in and be Ricky Ray and instantly, you're taking your team to the Grey Cups and you're throwing the perfect ball all the time. And everyone's like, what the hell's going on here? Like that's the exception, right? Bo Levi Mitchell, kind of the same. And he learned, with short time. But when you're losing and you had a guy who did win, right? Like, I know it's only 4-6, but when you're 0-14 bookending that's a big difference. So I don't understand it. You can maybe try something different. And here's even the wild one, guys. Did the CFL not change the rule that you could have two quarterbacks on the field? And now it's very much thinking outside the box. But you're 0-6. Think outside the box. Try something different. Yeah. Line up two quarterbacks. I know they're like, well, Tre Ford doesn't want to do run packages. I don't care. Just say, hey, sometimes you'll snap it to him. Sometimes you'll snap to Bethel-Thompson. Maybe they can throw a reverse in. You can try something that the defense has never seen. Or you can sit there and say, you know what? We'll keep doing the same thing and expect a different result.
Mm-hmm. Rod, what bothers me, it actually bothers me, is that we spend a lot of time when we have our open discussions about the Canadian Football League and things we'd like to change. And I know we always, in the end of the day, say the best person should get the job. That's fair. Mm-hmm. But we also talk about the development of Canadians at quarterback. And here's a guy with this raw talent, right? First of all, you're an outstanding athlete. You can throw the football. We saw scrambles last year and completions with completions, some of them going for touchdowns last year with Tre Ford that would be on any highlight reel. Why aren't we, especially in a situation where there's a rebuild, focusing on developing this guy who could be the next whatever? It bothers me.
Yeah, no, you just said it. Give Canadian QBs the opportunity. Maybe Jason, you tell me, is there something more in there that we're missing, not reading between the lines in the locker room that's affecting why this has happened? Because I can't, Bubs, I wish I had the answer for you. But
Well,
is there
it's only
something more, Jason?
a
You read the
lot of it
quotes.
was
You read the quotes.
Yeah, like a
Go
lot
ahead,
of it
sorry.
was Chris Jones, right? Chris Jones just
Right, yeah.
he wasn't a believer in Tre Ford, and that'll happen in pro sports, right? You need an opportunity and you need someone to believe in you. So that wasn't going to be him. So it's only a week, and Ford didn't get number one reps right away. I didn't think Jarius Jackson was going to come in his first day and change everything. So I understood the timing of it, but now you're 0-6. Your offense just had a terrible performance. But here's the other thing: we talked about Zach Collaros earlier. 35 years of age. Bethel-Thompson's 36. Zach Collaros, his last 3 years, I mentioned 90 touchdowns, 34. Well, Bethel-Thompson in his career, guys, is 79 and 55 touchdown interception ratio. So it's not like they have a 36-year-old guy who has historically not even been like a 1 to 1.5 TD to interception ratio. So what are we waiting for here to think that it's like, oh my goodness, like this guy's so good? And I don't mind Bethel-Thompson. But if the whole point to bring him in was to have a veteran to learn from, and then the veteran, the minute Tre Ford gets in the game, it's like, well, he got me out of my rhythm. Doesn't really seem to be working, right? It shows you a little bit of dysfunction. And I understand, some guys like, hey man, like, yeah, I want the guy to learn, but I want to play. And I get all that, but you're not playing well as a group. And the offense wasn't really a big issue, although I think in their loss to BC, it didn't get talked about enough. I thought their offense there, Bethel-Thompson missed 2 key throws. One of them that would have been a clear touchdown to Cobb. 2 plays later was an interception in the red zone, and that cost them the game, right? They lost that game, 24-21, whatever it was. So that's 2 other last 3 games where their offense has actually been a bigger issue than the defense. So to me, why not try it? I'm very curious what they do with practice and the reps. And then you look at it from a business standpoint. You guys are right. Like the crowd. Now the fans, sometimes the backup quarterback can be the most popular guy in a team sometimes. So I get that. It doesn't necessarily mean it's right. But when he's actually had success and the other guys pre and post him haven't, it's hard not to look and say, hey, and there might be some other guys in the room that say, yeah, Tre, when Tre's in, I'll guarantee you Brown, the running back's probably like, hey, maybe I'll get some more carries. I can get us in the game. And last year, like Kevin Brown was, he was really good in the second half of the season. 800 yards in the last 10 games rushing, not to mention catching the ball out of the backfield. Like you do that over a full season, you're talking 1,300 rushing yards, like plus your quarterback's rushing for 600. So, you had 2 guys on pace easily to be 1,000-yard rushers. And now they're 0-6 with the most one-dimensional attack in the CFL. No one passes more and runs less on a ratio than the Elks.
It completely changes what a team has to do defensively, and completely changes a team struggling on offense. So it's a win-win when you do that. So let's see what happens this week, Jason and Bubs.
Guys, Saskatchewan at Montreal, Calgary at Ottawa, Winnipeg in the T-Dot, Hamilton in E-Town. Rod, the game of the week is...
Well, we just said that. I'll tell you right now, if Tre Ford gets in, obviously that'll be an interesting one just to see if Hamilton keep things rolling. But obviously the 2 top teams, Montreal at 5-1, Saskatchewan at 5-1. I have that one circled for week 8 here. Yeah.
Yeah, it's hard not to go with the 2 5-1 teams. But I will say the intriguing matchup is, the other ones all can have some intrigue. But the Ottawa-Calgary game, because Ottawa's 4-2, despite not a great points for, points against ratio. And so are they for real, or were they just able to beat up on the sad sack Elks? We'll find out. Was Calgary, was that a one-off against BC, or is their defense turning it around? So that game intrigues me. And obviously Hamilton and Edmonton, just because, if Tre Ford's in, that's a storyline. If he isn't, it's a storyline. And they're still like Hamilton just finally got their first win. They probably don't want to say, well, now we're the team to give Edmonton their first win. So lots of good storylines. It's rare to have a week in the CFL where you're like, none of these games intrigue me. So that's a good thing about the schedule this year. So
yeah, I love this Winnipeg-Toronto game, and how can I with the Ticats Audio Network, your Tiger Cats, but the Argonauts thing. I mean, this Cameron Duke situation, he was not very good against the Ticats, and then Nick Arbuckle, Like that can't be your option. And, and somewhere Chad Kelly is floating around. And of course, what we talked about with Zach Collaros and the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, where, I mean, if they were to fall to 2-6, like it may be over for them. Like it could, like, I can't believe we're saying that about the Blue Bombers. So there's all kinds. You're right, Jason. Every one of these games this year has been somewhat intriguing. And to be honest, there have been very few boring games. They all seem to be boiling down to the final couple minutes. So yeah, these have been just outstanding games, and it's been a great season so far. And of course, everyone kind of loves the word parity. So we might be seeing that in the Canadian Football League, because Saskatchewan, Montreal, like, I mean, are we going to trust Caleb? Jason, you going to trust Caleb Evans?
Yeah, that's what's intriguing. Like, you look at the quarterbacks for both of those teams. Right now, their starters are gone. Well, what does this mean, right? Ottawa could be 5-2, tied for first place. Well, I guess tied with somebody for second place at the end of the weekend. And maybe Calgary suddenly 4-3 and Saskatchewan loses, and now they're only one win behind them. And I still think today, with health, everything else, BC's my number one team in the power rankings. I'd still give the Lions that, even though they lost to Calgary. But I would love to take a snapshot of the standings today, and then we'll see at the end of the season, because, is Hamilton, I think they were better than the record. I think Winnipeg still, I still believe in Zach Collaros. Like I'm probably too stubborn to want to write him off just yet. Edmonton, I don't have much faith. Let's be honest here. They continue to find ways to lose games. It's mind blowing to me. So, the biggest announcement in Edmonton is probably going to come later in August when they finalize the sale. It sounds like to an individual owner here in Edmonton, and that'll probably be a positive for him. And then the biggest announcement he'll have is who's going to be their president of football operations, because that's got to be step one, guys. Like there's a lot of work to do there. But I will say, I know I look at teams in the CFL that have had fan bases and tough times go up and down, but even though they've been brutal now for the last 3-4 years, there's still a passionate football base in Edmonton. And if you get the right owner, and I think a lot of Edmontonians, it's going to be a local guy. And I think a lot of people are going to want to support him just because he says, hey, this guy, you know what? He's an Edmontonian. They'll come out. And all they got to do is win like half of their home games, guys. I don't think anyone's expecting them next year to be 12-6 or anything ridiculous, because it's probably going to be 3 years in a row where they win fewer than 4 games. Or 4 games or fewer, that at least there'll be something to show for. And that's what I think to Tre Ford. It gives you a sense maybe to believe he's not going to solve all their issues defensively. He's not going to solve their O-line issues, but at least maybe he can cover up some of them and make it a little bit more exciting.
And you got to beat Calgary, of course. So, I mean, that just goes without saying, for crying out loud.
Well, hey, you know what? That's what's great about Labor Day, honestly. It doesn't matter what the records of teams are. Hamilton and Toronto, one could be 0-8, 0-9. The other one, they meet in Labor Day, and both fan bases, like, you love it. Like, I love the Labor Day. To me, in pro sports still, I would try to find in any league, any year where the schedule has 3 massive rivalry games, like BC, Ottawa, Montreal. It's not so much the same. It's getting a little bit closer, but Winnipeg, Saskatchewan, Edmonton, Calgary, Hamilton, Toronto, those are 3 massively intense games. And every rookie guy's like, holy shit, these games are different, right? Like the guys in the locker room, they know heading into that. You talk to so many players on those teams that it's just okay, this is like most of them tell me this is their college rivalry renewed.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Rod, for you, if Tre Ford does get into this Edmonton game, you got to still be cheering for the Tiger Cats.
Yeah, I got a little love for the Tiger Cats, obviously growing up down here, but obviously with Tre Ford being a Niagara Falls guy and him getting the opportunity, another opportunity. Let's hope it happens. But no, the storylines are galore, and that's what's great about this league.
Guys, the opportunity to chat with you guys about the Canadian Football League is a big treat for me and the Ticats Audio Network, and of course the CFL this week. You guys have been exceptional, outstanding. Love to hear your information, your insight, and of course your opinions matter the most to the people that watch this and listen to this podcast. Rod Mawhood, how do we contact you if we want to be talking some Niagara sports?
Well, 610 CKTB, Bell Media, iHeartRadio, listening to Saturday mornings, 9 to 10, repeat show Sunday nights, 6 to 7, every show podcasted, and of course, all the great Niagara athletes, and we're coming up, obviously, Olympic time, there's a lot there. And Niagara Sports Report at gmail.com. Niagara Sports Report at gmail.com if anyone wants to reach out. Bubs, good to speak with you. Hopefully we can run into each other soon.
Looking forward to it there. Jason, where can we contact you if we want to talk about some sports in E-Town?
Sports 1440, sports1440.com. You can watch the show live on Oilers Nation YouTube is where we're at. It's on Twitter, Facebook, everywhere else. And if you need to get a hold of me, just Gregor at sports1440.ca.
Well, folks, as you know, the Ticats Audio Network has all kinds of outstanding program. If you're a CFL fan, and of course a Ticats fan, and of course if you're listening to Game Day, myself at the pregame show, Simone and Courtney on the pre-game show, and of course RJ and Luke on the call for all games. You certainly want to join us on the Ticats Audio Network for the most exclusive. If you're a real Ticat fan, that's where you are watching. No offense, TSN, that's just the way it goes. Guys, for this, thanks again for joining us. All you listeners, enjoyed this week's game, and this has been the CFL This Week. I'm Bubba O'Neil. Have a great week.